Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the STL United Soccer Sunday Show FIFA World Cup Series. I'm Josh McGee, I'm here with Russell Bly. Russell, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good to be back. The group stages are over. We have tons of things to talk about, but before we get there, we want to thank once again to the people who are letting us shoot here. We're in the upstairs section of Southtown Pub, and we want to thank them for their generosity. What better place to come to this summer to celebrate the rest of the World Cup and any other sporting events going on than Southtown Pub. They have a great setup here with a huge menu, great selection of drinks. Come on out and get some food here at Southtown Pub. We also want to thank our other sponsors, Crossover Media LLC. Ricky's behind the camera once again producing this show for us. And we want to thank his team, St. Louis Club Atletico. As you can see, these awesome jerseys out here for you. They have been having a great inaugural season, and we'll talk a little bit more about them throughout the show, but want to thank them for supporting us. And we want to make sure that you guys go out and see a game sometime soon. Season's almost up, and they've been doing great. But Russell, let's jump into our group stage recap. So we've made it through the first portion of the FIFA World Cup. We have 16 teams moving on. So we want to start off with Group A.
What a World Cup it's been.
It's been
surprises,
very
exciting
surprising
games, one or two dull games, but that's how it goes.
Exactly. So it's been a great couple of games to start off with. We want to start off in Group A. Two teams that are advancing out of Group A. Uruguay, undefeated in the group, 9 points, 3 straight wins, and the host nation, Russia. They were able to get through with 2 of their first 3 games coming through with a W, and then losing their last game to Uruguay. So Russell, let's start with Uruguay. I mean, we talked about South American teams struggling in Europe for World Cups, but Uruguay, they went undefeated, and they didn't concede a single goal.
No, they squeaked by 1-0 the first 2 games, but they really turned it on against Russia.
I thought that was probably their biggest result. I think that first 2 games, they struggled to score, and you think about the 2 guys up front that we talked about, Luis Suarez and Edison Cavani, only had the 1 goal in the game versus Saudi Arabia between the 2 at that point, but both score against Russia, and that's something that Uruguay is going to need to have going into the round of 16 matchup.
Absolutely.
Those 2 guys really being on point. And let's talk about the host nation. I mean, we kind of thought because of the struggles coming into the World Cup and the pressure that was going to be on this team, they would struggle. Well, they kind of put that to bed in that first game, winning 5-0 versus Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. Took away all the pressure.
Exactly. And then they took care of business against Egypt, and pretty much they didn't really need a result against Uruguay. They kind of sealed their fate. One of the best offenses so far in the tournament with their 8 goals, and I think it's really cool that their 2 leading scorers, Denis Cheryshev and Artem Zuba, both didn't even start in the first game. And they came on at different stages of their first 2 games, scored a lot of goals, and now they are mainstays in the team.
Absolutely. Yeah, good work for the home team.
Okay, so real quickly, we got to talk about the 2 teams that aren't advancing. Saudi Arabia is one. They had a tough go going up against some of these bigger teams, just couldn't get things done until the final game they were able to get a victory. And then we have to talk about the sad story of Egypt and Mo Salah not moving on to the round of 16. Salah was out the first match with that injury he sustained in the Champions League final, came back in the second match, and in the third match he scored goals both against Russia and against Saudi Arabia, but it wasn't enough. I still think it was a good showing for him, but it was a real tough blow to see Egypt eliminated.
A little disappointing to see Egypt finish at the bottom of the group.
Definitely. So we'll look ahead now to what happened in Group B. Group B, the 2 teams that most people predicted ended up moving on in the order that they were predicted. Spain and Portugal, after a thrilling 3-3 draw to open up that group, were able to get things done against the lesser teams in that group. However, the 2 draws at the end of the group kind of decided how Spain and Portugal would finish. Spain ended up winning the group.
Exactly, yes. A little bit of a surprise there, but they came out on top. And it's going to be an interesting round of 16 matchup for both teams, actually.
I think so. I think for Spain, a good development is that they haven't had production from the striker position in quite some time. Well, Diego Costa had 3 goals in the group stage, so I think that's a good sign for them. That's
a good sign for them.
All of those passes are finally turning into some goals. I mean, they scored goals in every game, 2 goals in 2 of the 3 games. So I think Spain were able to get things going, especially on the offensive end. For Portugal, I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo kind of took the tournament by storm with that hat trick against Spain, and then scored the winner in their next game against Morocco. He's obviously leading that team right now and hoping to march further and further into the tournament.
Exactly.
So,
Agreed.
Let's talk about first those 2 teams real quick, Iran and Morocco. Iran got an opening match victory against Morocco 1-0 that almost got them into the next round, but they couldn't get the job done against Portugal. It was a lot to ask of those two teams, obviously, to move on. But yes, let's get ahead to those matchups between Group A and Group B. So the winner of Group A playing the runner of Group B and vice versa. So the first match will be Uruguay versus Portugal. I think these two teams, they're pretty rugged. I think they are pretty sound defensively, and they've obviously got one or two guys that are the main source of their goals.
They've both proven themselves. It's going to be a really interesting matchup, stylistically, and looking to the main players on each team to produce the goods again.
Exactly. I think you're going to see these two teams really lean on those guys up top. Ronaldo for Portugal and Edison Cavani and Luis Suarez for Uruguay. But I think it's going to be a tough.
See how many yellow cards will be accumulated.
I think they're going to be quite a few. I think that's how the game's going to go. On the other side, you got the host nation Russia going up against a perennial powerhouse in Spain. It's going to be a lot to ask of Russia, but they're playing in Moscow in front of the home crowd. They could really turn this into some kind of a game.
And with some of the other results in the tournament and the way the matchups have turned out, they're on what looks like the weaker side of the draw.
Exactly.
So it's good news for Spain and also for the host nation. Maybe if they come up with a couple of good results, they can progress further than we might have expected.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of optimism on that side. And you look at it, Spain, again, while the fact that they have scored a lot of goals, they did concede a lot of goals in that group stage. Defense did look a little shaky. And Russia's offense, well, it's been going through a couple of games. So this is a game, if you were a betting man, I wouldn't be too confident in just because of that home crowd factor and that Russia has seemingly found some kind of form.
Yep. It's going to be an interesting couple of matches there.
Exactly. All right, we're going to move on now to Group C. Group C, headlined by France. They were able to win the group with 7 points. They won their first 2 games and then had a 0-0 draw versus Denmark in the final matchup. Denmark, that's all they needed to get in as well. They finished second in the group. We have an opening round matchup win versus Peru 1-0. Also another draw versus Australia 1-1. Starting off with France, I think the thing that most impressed me with France is they didn't play their best, especially offensively. Only 3 goals in the group stage for a team with that much talent is a little disappointing. But the defense, they kept
Griezmann, for example, just the penalty.
Exactly. So I think people had a lot of expectations for him. Mbappe only had 1 goal, and he's their next source of offense. But the defense, 2 clean sheets. They rotated their outside backs a ton in this opening stage, and they were still able to get this done.
You wonder if this is a case of a team that's really managing the tournament.
Exactly.
Got their 2 1-goal wins that they needed. Rested some players for the third game. So, they're in reasonable shape, I think, going forward.
Could be sitting in their best.
We don't know. We have to
stages,
see how they do.
Exactly. So it's going to be tough. But Denmark, moving on, I think they were quite impressive. Again, only let up 1 goal as well defensively. Kasper Schmeichel was huge in net for them as well. And I keep thinking about that opening game. If Peru hits that penalty in the second half.
How many missed penalties did we see?
Exactly.
Already?
It's been kind of a theme.
Crucial.
Exactly. So this one kind of almost decided the group. But I think Denmark still, we're able to get the job done. And, going forward, they can be a pretty dangerous team, especially in that other half of the bracket.
Their next matchup is going to be interesting.
Exactly. So
we'll get to that eventually.
Yep. So the first match, we're going to move on to Group D so that we can detail those matchups. Group D, one of the most intriguing, drama-filled groups of the group stage. The winner of Group D, not who people predicted, although we did say to look out for this team. We just weren't firmly enough on this. But Croatia actually were able to win Group D. 9 points, 3 wins. Very impressive. 2 clean sheets.
7 goals.
7 goals. Midfield bossed every game. And I think obviously the big result, and we'll get to this team in a little bit, the 3-0 win versus Argentina was one of the...
I would call it a shock.
Shocks, one of the best played games in the tournament by a team. I can't say good enough things about Croatia. They've done an excellent job. Luka Modric with 2 goals to help lead that team. And they just look so confident right now. And again, winning their group, they get to be on the other half of the bracket. And I think this team's got a real chance to maybe make a quarterfinal, semifinal run. Yeah,
they are in form.
Exactly.
They're playing well together. And another team that's in the group and didn't make it is Iceland, who had bossed them in the qualification.
Exactly. It's definitely a turn of events there. So now we're going to talk about the team that just eked in second place. One of the most talked about teams of the tournament, Argentina, on 4 points, were able to somehow get past the group stage, but it was not pretty, Russell. This was a basically a near disaster in terms of what happened with this team. It took a Marcos Rojo shot in the box in the final game against Nigeria to clinch a spot. This is the only win in the group stage for Argentina.
Right.
Team that many
1-1
picked
and 1.
to go far. So
Absolutely.
obviously,
They're in chaos.
they are in chaos. Lionel Messi's penalty seemed to start this chain of events with the 1-1 draw versus Iceland. And of course, we talked about the 3-0 loss to Croatia. Afterwards, being reported that their head coach had been stripped of all his power and that players were going to decide the lineup for the game against Nigeria. I mean, it worked, but this is a team that's really playing with fire right now.
And it came down to that matchup we were looking for, Nigeria against Argentina.
Exactly. Very familiar foes there, but Lionel Messi scored in that final game, and they were able to get it done. And now they move on to what I think is one of the best matchups we got in the round of 16. Group winners of Group C, France, going up against Argentina. So much attacking talent. You definitely think Argentina has to be playing better, but France, as well as we talked about, may not be playing their best football right now either. So
That's got to be the marquee matchup.
Exactly.
In the round of 16.
So, I mean, these two nations, two teams that are striving. You think about Argentina, lost last time in the finals. You think about France, haven't been since 2006 with all that talent.
Runners up in the Euros.
Exactly. These are two starving nations, really, right now,
Yep.
with all that talent that need to probably step up and go deep into this
What do
tournament.
you think about the other two teams in this group?
With other teams that didn't move on,
Nigeria.
I'm really sad because Iceland, they've been a Cinderella story since 2016. They played really well in this tournament, getting that result against Argentina, and then playing close against Croatia, especially on the final day, that 2-1 loss. And then you think about Nigeria. I mean, oh man, I just want to keep looking at those uniforms. I mean, they're fantastic, but they played with a style and pace that was refreshing at times in this group. When you think about some of the defensive
They had a
teams
great
and things
game
like that.
against Iceland.
Exactly, 2-0 victory. They're great. You think about all the young guys that they had. Nigeria will be back, I think, next time. But it was disappointing. These are two very likable teams.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take a short break. It's a halftime of sorts. We'll be right back with the rest of the group's recap. But now, hear from a word from one of our sponsors.
I hear the noise on the pavement. It's a silence burning deep in the air. The rumors roaming of love that cannot be. I want you now because I'm lonesome while the clock steals our call. Ya no quiero volver a verte. Ya no quiero ver. Ya no quiero pensar en ti, no. Ya no volveré a perderte así. Si ahora te dejo ir, si ahora te dejo ir, ahora te dejo.
All right, welcome back to the STL United Soccer Sunday Show FIFA World Cup Series. Let's get to the second half of the group stage, starting off with Group E, group headlined by Brazil, and they were able to win the group with 7 points, getting a couple wins in their last two matches. The second team in Group E was Switzerland. They were able to go through with a couple of draws and a crucial 2-1 victory versus Serbia in their second match. We're also starting with Brazil. They drew against Switzerland their first game. That was the whole Neymar 10 fouls
Yep.
incident and the fact that he had
sort
left
of-
training early. There was a lot of worry going on with Brazil at that
I
time.
think that set the tone for Brazil's 3 games in this group, was how much fouling was Neymar going to be subjected to. We saw it consistently throughout the group.
Exactly, and at that time, the team hadn't really stepped up in terms of maybe taking away some of that pressure from Neymar.
Exactly.
But in that second game and then going up against Serbia, you saw a collection of guys led by Philip Coutinho, who scored
Coutinho's really stepped up.
some really great goals.
Goal, and that assist in the third game was just fantastic.
Exactly. So I think that's the different dynamic to why Brazil had some success in this group. They found a couple guys to help take away that pressure from Neymar and take away the
They're
goal
going to
scoring.
need that experience going forward.
Exactly.
Knockout games.
How about Switzerland? I mean, this is a good team. Again, they
Tough team.
exactly. So I mean, they were able to get that win that they
I'll compare
needed.
them to their opponents in the next round, Sweden.
There you go. And the last game, I mean, it was 2-2 draw versus Croatia. But Switzerland, the team historically that doesn't score a lot of goals, but in those last few games scored a couple goals apiece. I think that's good for them going forward.
Absolutely.
So a couple of teams that didn't make out of the group. We talked about Serbia. They won their first game, but then couldn't get any results after that, losing a couple times to Switzerland and Brazil. Ton of talent on that team, but
Talented, just didn't get the bounce of the ball some of the time.
exactly. I think
And
that
it was a difficult group.
they will continue to grow and be
Absolutely.
back next time. And then Costa Rica couldn't recreate that magic. I mean, from their run in 2014. There's a lot to ask of them, but I think it was some good moments. Think about that 2-2 draw in the last
Absolutely.
game.
They came back and made that happen at the end of the game.
Exactly. All right, moving on to Group F. We're going to have a lot of things to say about Group F.
What are we going to say about Group F?
Well, first of all,
What's
I
the
don't know
headline
if
story?
anybody, I don't know if it's a headline story. I don't know if anybody had Sweden winning this group. And how about Sweden?
And who came fourth in the group?
Well, I want to hold off on that because I think we could take up an entire show talking about who came up in fourth. But Sweden, 3-0 victory versus Mexico in their last game to really clinch things for them. They beat South Korea 1-0. They did lose to Germany on that crazy free kick at the end of the game, but you could
Okay.
say that they outplayed all three of their opponents.
And
in
don't
this-
forget, this is the team. This is the dark horse team. This is the team that knocked Italy out.
Exactly. They had a right to be here. They chose not to bring Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and they're still scoring goals. They're still doing great. 2 clean sheets.
They're playing well as a team.
It was really impressive by Sweden, I think, in this group. Other team advancing is Mexico. And now I know people are thinking, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. But Mexico is the other team advancing. They had 6 points. Huge 1-0 victory versus Germany. One of the best results of the opening group stage, don't you think?
They played extremely well, and perhaps Germany just played poorly as well. But Mexico certainly played their part in their victory.
It was a little nervy at the end with that loss to Sweden. I think if one Germany goal went in, they would have been eliminated. But
And for the first 90 minutes of the game, yes.
exactly. So they're able to move on. They got a tough upcoming game that we'll get to here in a second. But I thought Mexico very impressive and
They've acquitted themselves well.
exactly. So, all right, Russell. Who am I leaving out in Group F?
Well, South Korea, of course.
Right, of course.
Two teams finished on 3 points. One
Exactly.
was South Korea.
South Korea won their last game very impressively. Bossed their opponent quite well. Scored 2 goals late. Looked very, very competitive in their other matches as well. But who are the other team that we're leaving out
Well,
currently?
Germany. Germany, the team that many of us had picked to go all the way.
Many people picked all the way, at least to get out of the group stage, because they had done so every time in their entire nation's history. They
But
at least
they
advanced.
followed the pattern of Italy 8 years ago and Spain 4 years ago as previous winners, and they're no longer here.
Quite shocking. You lose to Mexico in your opening game. You need a miracle free kick at the end just to beat Sweden. And when you just need 1 goal, a 1-0 victory against South Korea,
Through
you get
90
nothing.
minutes, you get nothing. And then in desperation, you're pressing to get that goal when you give up 2 goals.
And we were talking before the taping just how many theories and problems that this Germany team has eventually. I mean, we could go on. You have the coach who has been looking possibly at other jobs with club teams. Maybe his mind wasn't totally on it. You got a difference of influx in players in terms of young versus veteran guys who just hadn't maybe gelled
See,
enough
the
together.
chemistry wasn't there.
But what was one of your bigger points? I think it was in terms of the offense. What was offered Germany?
if you want to point to someone who's responsible for 2 teams going out, it would be Robert Lewandowski.
And why is that? Because he doesn't play for Germany.
No, he doesn't play for Germany. That's the issue. He plays for Bayern Munich, and Bayern Munich is the backbone of the German team.
Exactly. So they just don't have a consistent strike force to lean on at this tournament. There's no Miroslav Klose anymore.
Correct.
Timo Werner, a young kid from Leipzig, was responsible for leading the line. He just couldn't do it. I mean, he had some nice plays, but he was better out wide than he was up the middle. And for a German team, you need that consistent presence up top, the guy to run in or knock some headers down and be a strike force all by yourself, essentially.
Now, Germany created quite a bit of stuff, opportunities. They just couldn't put them away.
Yep, got to
So-
be clinical.
And there were times during games when they weren't playing well. They just weren't consistent.
Exactly. My theory is all about leadership. When I think about Germany, my first real experience with them was in 2002, and the team that went that far, and then 2006 when the World Cup was in Germany, that they were able to get to the third place matchup. I think of Philipp Lahm, Bastian Schweinsteiger, Michael Ballack, Miroslav Klose, these veteran guys that always had cool heads, great leaders. When they were playing a funk, they'd get the team out of it immediately, no questions asked. Germany always was very consistent in that regard. When you look across this German team, maybe we should have seen it coming, but there was no real leadership in these 3 games. You think about maybe Emmanuel Neuer, but he's been out the entire year with that broken foot. Defense, some guys young and inexperienced, other guys not in form. Midfield, same thing.
Cruz stepping up when he needed to, but okay, it wasn't enough.
Right, exactly. Maybe that's not more of his best qualities and stuff like
sure.
that. So, again, it was just, and maybe in that instance you should rely on the coach, but Joachim Löw just seemed to be out of it in terms of from a tactical standpoint in these 3 games that
You
they
also
had.
got to wonder, it's a pattern. When teams come up against the champion, they make special preparations.
Well, exactly. I think that
They're very aware tactically of what they're going to try to do, and if they execute, you see what happens.
exactly. In all sports, you're going to get your best shot as the defending champs from every team that you play.
Exactly.
But also from the standpoint is you got 4 years now to prepare for potential scenarios, especially if you're a European team. You've seen Germany in qualifying before. You know these guys. They're all over TV. They're all in their different leagues. So there's quite a familiarity that I think helped out, especially if you think about maybe Sweden. They didn't win the game, but they were in it till the very end. And then you think about it from a Mexican standpoint, it just seemed like they knew what to do against Germany. Patient on defense, clinical in their counterattacks. That's how they scored that goal. And they were able to hold on. So, shock of the tournament. Germany not advancing out of the group stage for the first time in their history.
It is a shock.
So let's get to the matchups for Group E and Group F. We talked about it. Mexico, they have a daunting task ahead of them because they will be facing up against Brazil. 2 fun offensive teams, and you got Brazil trying to make amends for their semifinal loss in 2014. Mexico, they haven't gotten to the round of 16 in forever, it seems like. So quite an opportunity for both sides.
Yeah, I agree totally. That's going to be a great match as well. I'd put that as maybe the second marquee match of the round of 16.
I'd have to agree. And then the other matchup, a low-key affair, but again, in that
2 dark horses.
weaker part of the bracket, a lot of opportunity for any team on that side. Sweden versus Switzerland. 2 very consistent teams so far from the defensive perspective, and maybe not a lot of guys you've heard of, but 2 teams that played very well. Great chemistry between them.
Yeah, yep, exactly. That's going to be a tighter match, I think.
Definitely. Kind of compare it to Croatia-Denmark.
If you want to start calling games that are going to go to penalties, this could be one of them.
I think so. I think that could be one.
I
of
could
the
be wrong.
results.
It could be 4-3 or something. Who knows?
Very possible. All right, let's go to the last 2 groups. We got Group G. The 2 teams that most people predicted to move on did so once again. Belgium ended up winning Group G, 9 points, 3 victories. One of the best offensive teams. I think the best offensive team
Most goals scored
in the tournament
9
so
goals
far. 9 goals. Guys like Romelu Lukaku with 4, Eden Hazard with 2, helped lead that attack. They were very prolific against the 2 weaker teams in the division, but also getting a necessary victory against England.
Whether they wanted to win the game or whether they didn't want to win the game, as it turned out, given the results from earlier in the day and what have you.
Yeah, exactly. I think
earlier
that's
in the tournament, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you've got to look at what happened in the first 2 games of this group for both teams, I think, to really figure out how these teams are going.
I think you're exactly right. Those 2 games, I think, really showed what these 2 teams are capable of.
Absolutely.
But now going up against each other, I think it was a decent warm-up for things to come. There are going to be a lot more tougher teams that they're going to have to
There's
face.
a good opportunity to run out some players who hadn't seen much game time so far.
Exactly. You're going to need some of these guys to come off the
They're going to
bench
have to come
and
off
make
the
an
bench,
impact.
and so I think it was a great opportunity. The result, okay, 1-0 to Belgium, but doesn't mean all that much other than which side of the bracket they got thrown to.
Exactly. So now let's talk about England. They finished second, but they were pretty convincing, especially thinking about that 6-1 win versus Panama. That's the best I've seen an England team look in quite some time.
This is a team that breezed through qualification and is playing well together. Southgate's got them on the same page. So, it's going to be interesting to see how far they can go in this tournament.
And who is your golden boot leader right now
Who
to the group
is-
stage?
Harry Kane.
Sir Harry Kane at this point. 5 goals.
In 2 games.
3 goals against Panama, hat trick for him as well. He's been impressive, helping to lead that line. I also think this is quite interesting. There's one guy who is outscoring the rest of the England team. Who would that be?
One guy who's outscoring the rest of the England
Besides Harry Kane, John Stones,
John Stones.
center back for Manchester City, not the most fleetest of foot, somehow has 2 goals.
Yes.
More than the rest of the team besides Harry Kane combined. I think that's just quite an interesting stat. So, but let's talk about the 2 teams that didn't move on out of this group. Panama and Tunisia. I mean, they just didn't have the talent
They were just overwhelmed, I
to
think.
cope with these teams. Now they had great moments.
Yes.
I think with the goals today, Tunisia beat Panama.
Well, Tunisia, England was 1-1 until after the 90th minute. So.
Exactly. So I don't know if it's it's not their first World Cup. I don't know if it's their first World Cup win. It could be. I know that several teams, if you think about Saudi Arabia, that was their second World Cup victory ever. So, I mean, for these smaller teams, it's a lot to ask them to get out of the group stage, but they can have these moments that people will be talking about for the rest of their lives.
Exactly.
So that's one of the cool things about the World Cup. All right, let's move on to the last group, Group H. This was a tough one to predict. Any one of these teams could have gotten out of the group, and that's eventually what happened. A lot of confusion, a lot of great
Especially
games.
after the first round of games.
Exactly. But Colombia were able to win this group on 6 points. They suffered a pretty shocking opening loss, 2-1 to Japan. They went down to 10 men in that game, but they rallied 3-0 versus Poland. Great statement win. And then today, a 1-0 victory versus Senegal.
Got the job done.
Exactly. So going forward, I'm a little worried about James Rodriguez. Subbed off in the 31st minute today with an injury. Even if he's not scoring, he's their main source of creativity and life into the offense. But they've gotten contributions from a lot of different guys. Their leading scorer is also center back, Yerry Mina, who plays for AC Milan. So they've got a different dynamic to this team. But hey, in a group that not many people knew who would come out of it, they were able to come out on top.
And the team, as you said, the favourites started out poorly in this group. One of the favourites came on and one didn't.
Exactly.
Colombia, Poland. So, this is a team that maybe is starting to gel.
Exactly. And the team that came in second, probably actually most people thought would come last in this group, but Japan, representing the continent of Asia in the round of 16, they were able to move on with 4 points. Talk about that opening victory versus Colombia. They drew 2-2 versus Senegal in a very entertaining game. And they lucked out with the loss today against Poland, but they were still able to go on. But I think that opening victory versus Japan opened my eyes to a team that plays really well together and actually have a great deal of creative offensive players.
And they're cohesive. They're well organised. I think there was a shot of how to play the offside trap in the game against Senegal that you've probably seen the image.
Oh yes, that was extremely well timed, well put together. And I mean, again, you think about Japan. Besides that Senegal game, only allowing 1 goal against the 2 prohibitive or odds-on favorites in that group against Colombia and Poland. Very impressive for them in Japan. All right, let's talk about 2 teams that don't move on. We'll start with Poland. They get the victory in the last game, but they were extremely disappointing. They were a seeded team in this group.
They were the top seed in the group.
And we talked about Robert Lewandowski being responsible for eliminating 2 teams. Well, the team that he does play for, he did not score for them at all.
He did not produce. Now, was it because there was too much focus on him? Were teams able to mark him out of the game? Who knows?
We talked about that as being a possibility. In Poland, they have some guys on that team who are really good at getting service into the box, playing some great passes, but they
a solid group of guys.
They couldn't seem to connect with him or vice versa in this group stage. And then on the defensive side, I mean, think about it, especially in the game against Colombia, they just seemed completely out of it. And I mean, it was a really disappointing performance from them. On the flip side, I think Senegal had a great, fantastic tournament. They were not eliminated on points. They were not eliminated on goal difference.
No.
They were eliminated on fair play points, which for people who don't know, it's the amount of yellow and red cards that you got. Senegal had more yellow cards and red cards than Japan, and that is what sends them home.
That was it.
You got to think of some other tiebreaker, don't you think? I mean, I was thinking just before we tape the show, just some ideas. Maybe something like clean sheets or something. Go for a defensive tiebreaker or something instead of just the goal difference or whatever. But
Right.
I mean, because how can you say, if we had fouled somebody less, that determines if we should move on or not?
Well, it can come down to an interpretation of a particular referee, whether that's a yellow card or not.
Very
I
true.
think the difference was something like 3 yellow cards, so not just a single yellow
something
card.
like that. But Senegal, they beat Poland in the opening game, and really cool draw versus Japan. And they just today losing 1-0 to Colombia late on in the second half. If they had gotten a draw of some kind, they would have gone through.
Yeah. No, if you look at it, they actually had identical results all the way through in each round to Japan, considering they had the 2-2 draw with Japan in the second game.
Exactly, and they were Africa's best chance.
They were Africa's best chance.
Having a team in the round of 16. They're really the only continent besides, I guess, the Oceania group they're not represented here
Yep.
in the next stage of the World
So
Cup.
I think they did themselves a lot of credit.
Exactly. They were one of my favorite teams to watch. So let's get the last two matchups of the round of 16. You've got the Group G champions, Belgium, going up against Japan. It's on the tougher side of the bracket, but I think Belgium have to be happy with their first opponent in terms of just the talent on both sides of the
That
field.
might be the last match that they're happy with if they make it through.
Very true. It's going to be a tough road ahead, but I think, again, you got some guys that are banged up. We just talked about them implementing some guys that they're going to need off the bench here in later stages of the tournament. This could be another one of those games. Got to be careful. You can't take Japan too lightly because that's what everybody else in their group did, and now that's why they're here. So they're going to have to be on their toes, I think, still in this matchup.
No, at the top level, there's a very fine line between dominating another team and not dominating, especially with Japan. It's extremely well organized.
Exactly. So on the other side, England, I mean, they get in that easier half, but they've got one of the most difficult matchups on that side of the bracket. They're going up against Colombia.
Potentially, this could be a really difficult game.
Right. I think England, they're going to have to get those guys back into the team. They're going to have to impose themselves physically, I think, in this game. I think is where they're going to be best and force that kind of English Premier League type style of play against Colombia. They don't want to get too exposed on counterattacks of that nature.
And it depends on how well they shut down some of the key guys for Colombia, Falcao and Cuadrado, for example.
Exactly. All right, well, that is our group stage recap. Now I want to look further ahead maybe to some of these round of 16 matchups and potentially teams and maybe some other games that we could potentially see.
So we talked about there being two distinct sides of the draw at this point. You want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that why we keep talking about one half the bracket, one not. I just think that you think of the prohibited favorites that are still in this tournament. Brazil, Belgium, France. They're all on one side of the bracket.
Exactly.
Look on the other side, I would put Spain as the favorite team in that side.
7 European teams in Colombia.
Right. And then England would be your second, and then maybe Colombia
Croatia.
third, and then Croatia has as just good a chance as those other teams.
Yep.
So
I think those are the top teams. Depending on how well Spain plays, Spain-Croatia could be a really interesting game.
and how did this happen? It's because of teams like Argentina not winning their group,
And
Germany not advancing,
Yep.
and some of the other groups maybe finishing 2-1 instead of 1-2.
Sure, we would have expected to see Germany as the winners of the group on this bottom half of the draw.
Exactly, and I think that would have balanced out some sides of the brackets. But again, you're going to have to beat the good teams to get to the late stages of the World Cup. I'm really excited, even on that loaded side of the bracket, some of the potential matchups you could get. In that top corner of the bracket, you have a potential of a rematch of a Euro 2016 final in France versus Portugal.
Quarterfinals, right?
You could have a Messi versus Ronaldo showdown that I'm sure everyone in the world would be interested in, whether you're a casual soccer fan or a diehard. You could think about a Brazil versus Belgium matchup, two teams with just so much talent and looking ahead to try to get into that World Cup final and kind of elevate. I mean, you think about Belgium winning their first one, Brazil, redemption from 2014. A lot of good stories on that side, but I mean, the other side of the bracket, you could see some teams make the deepest runs of their entire nation's history,
Not
which
that
is really
some
cool.
of these teams haven't gone deep before. I mean, Croatia, I think, has been to a semi-final before.
They have. I mean, in the past, I mean, let's say, what,
Sweden's
2 or
been to a
decades or so?
final before.
They
England
have.
obviously has won before. So these are teams that have some experience. There's Spain, obviously. But there's the opportunity for some of these other teams, Russia, Denmark, Switzerland, to go further than ever, and Colombia to go further than ever before.
And I make fun of England's optimism and somewhat sometimes arrogance of how good their team is, but I would legitimately be excited if I was an England fan based on form. And if you can get past Colombia,
Yep.
some of the teams that you can run into making your deepest run of the past few attempts in these World Cups.
If you're good enough, this is your opportunity.
Exactly.
Are you good enough?
Exactly. I think that you're going to have to play your best. We didn't see that from some of the favorites in all of these games, but they were still able to get through. Now, all of a sudden, if, say, in Argentina, we're able to discover their form and Messi starts scoring goals, I don't think we can be too surprised. As long as you're in, you have a chance.
Absolutely.
And you can rediscover your form from previous qualifying games or previous group stage
It's a new
games.
tournament.
Exactly. 16 teams left. Going to be some great opening matchups. Before we wrap up, Russell, I just want to talk about maybe some of the cool moments that you've seen, whether it's beyond the field or off the field with certain countries and teams here so far in this World Cup. So much to go on and reminisce about, and so many great things to cherish so
Yeah,
far.
I think off the field, it's been great to see all the size of the fan support from some of the countries. Countries like Australia, 25,000 Australians in the stadium.
And Colombia too. I've been really
Colombia.
impressed with them. They're
Yellow
section by
Sea.
section. It's insane.
Absolutely.
The South American support that they're able to come over And I mean, you hear all these anthems and such with them, and you feel like it's a home game. We're back in Brazil. It's been really cool to see the support, and even with the smaller countries, such as with Iceland and
Iceland, that's another one. Absolutely.
Exactly, have been able to show up and take over certain sections of the games, and it's been really cool to see. I mean, you know that there's a lot of Russian fans there. You know, there's a lot of American fans there, but these countries are all very well represented. But I think also another point you were talking about, is we talked about it before, was on the field, VAR. How much was it going to impact the tournament? And you and I have both said that we think it's gone swimmingly so far.
It's gone well. It's made certain that decisions have been correct in crucial situations. Penalties have been awarded. Penalties have been awarded and then turned down after review. It's gone both ways. So I think it's working well, and it's working efficiently.
Yes, I think that
it's a key point.
With sports and leagues here in America, we think about like Major League Baseball. We take 5 to 10 minutes with guys on headphones listening back at headquarters. Or you think of the NFL having to go to the hood and taking a long time with that as well. These are being done in a couple of minutes' time. Sometimes not even having to go to the sideline of the monitor. You just get the guys in the room tell the ref, this is the deal.
Sometimes the ref wants to take a look at it. He goes, looks at it, takes him 20 seconds.
Exactly. And while I think that you've seen a lot of players kind of bombard the ref doing that classic rectangle square signal to go look at it, what it's eliminated is as soon as the decision's been made,
done.
There's not much argument.
There's no argument anymore.
Because everything's been seen. They've got so many cameras right now at these games that they're able to capture every angle of every potential penalty or red card or any other incident or offsides, and it's just not a discussion anymore, which is nice to see. If these refs are doing a great job, which I think they have been doing, there's no reason that they need to be continually bombarded by wasteful arguments.
Some of the leagues where there have been complaints about how long it's taking to make decisions, I think they'll look at what's happened here and do things more efficiently, effectively.
Exactly. Getting back to some of the off-the-field stuff, my heart has just been lifted before. I get so excited before the game, seeing these countries come out to their supporters, these national anthems. I'm starting to memorize just the tunes of some of them in my head, and some of the images. I think, especially in the last game, some of these teams that have already been eliminated, they know this is their last match at the World Cup. They don't know if they'll be back. And I think of a team like Peru, just seeing their fans in the stands, so many tears of not just sadness that they're leaving, but joy that the fact that they get to be here and see their team, and then they go out and they win, which is fantastic. You think about the Iceland Viking clap, which has been one of the favorite chants that people have really grown accustomed to over the past few years, seeing it for the last time. You just kind of forget when you're watching the games and the play just how much this means to these types of fans. I know that the U.S. are not in it, but I've taken so much joy in seeing these other teams that have not gotten a chance in the past few years, some even longer, to be at the World Cup.
Absolutely, yes. I agree with you. So we've seen 3/4 of the games of this World Cup, 16 games to go. We're at a crucial stage. It's going to be exciting.
And much like the NCAA tournament, we've had some good Cinderella stories. There's some good underrated underdog teams still left in it.
Yep.
But now we're going to start to see
a good mixture.
The best of the best really go at it, especially on that one side of the bracket. And it's going to be really exciting. We had some great matchups already, and the potential for what we could see down the road in the quarterfinals and further is going to be really, really cool.
I'm expecting more surprises.
I mean, you have to. This has been a World Cup of just twists and turns. I mean, some predictions, came out as most people would, but there are other groups that have been completely turned on their head and have made people look silly, and that's the beauty of the World Cup.
That's why you play the games.
Exactly. Well, that's going to wrap things up for our group stage recap and looking ahead to the round of 16. Not sure when our next episode will be, but we'll definitely be breaking down the rest of the matchups and games from the FIFA World Cup with you all. We want to thank, first of all, Southtown Pub for letting us come here and film this spectacular show. Come here, enjoy the food, enjoy some drinks. Summer is still young. Come out, watch any of your favorite sporting events, watch the rest of the World Cup. This is a great atmosphere, a great setup that they have at Southtown Pub. It's also the official supporters spot for St. Louis Club Atletico. A fantastic inaugural season for the Bluebirds. They're already in the playoffs, but they are battling for even a higher seed, a chance to host a playoff game. This team really needs your support. Come out to the games. They're at St. Mary's High School. Hopefully they're able to host a playoff game, and you can just see how much has been succeeded here in their first season. They beat one of the prolific powerhouses of the league, FC Wichita, who have been having this long unbeaten run. STL Club Atletico were able to beat them. Just a tremendous inaugural season by the Bluebirds. I want to thank Crossover Media and Ricky Garza for helping us out producing this show. And of course, if you want to see more of me and Russell and the rest of our team, check out the STL United Soccer Sunday show on 590 The Fan KFNS every Sunday from 8 to 10 a.m. Central Time. We cover the entirety of the World Cup and also some of the stories in soccer that people are not really talking about. We interview great authors. We talk about other current events as well. It's a really fun show. We love doing it, and you can learn so much about the beautiful game while you're listening. So check us out on the STL United Soccer Sunday show, and thanks for listening to our FIFA World Cup podcast.